Hello, patriots, praying citizens, and truth seekers. It's April 26th, the beginning of a new weekend, a time to rest and relax and enjoy your families and to consider these new clues from our number 17 friend. I'm calling this video Renegade and Threats to the President. So let's get going with this first post. Post number 3324, How the Obama White House Engaged Ukraine to Give Russia Collusion Narrative an Early Boost. He links us with an article from The Hill, John Solomon, and then in bold and brackets, all caps, Hussein. Friends, the onion is only beginning to be peeled. And he writes about the Obama White House connection to Ukraine and how they used an old investigation to try and take down Paul Manafort. So there was a meeting in January of 2016 between the Obama National Security Council, the FBI, the State Department, and the DOJ with top Ukrainian prosecutors and investigators. The goal was to revive this 2014 FBI investigation into payments from Ukraine's Russia-backed Party of Regions to certain Americans. Their target was GOP lobbyist Paul Manafort, who had a lobbying firm that was tied to Trump through Roger Stone. After interviewing Manafort about whether he received undeclared payments from the party of ousted Ukrainian President Yanukovych, who is a friend of Vladimir Putin, and whether he engaged in improper foreign lobbying, the FBI shut down the case without charging Manafort. And why? Because they didn't have anything against him. That makes the January 2016 meeting one of the earliest documented efforts by the Obama administration to build the Russia collusion hoax. Other things that were noted from this meeting, that the Ukraine was meddling in U.S. elections because suddenly there is a release of a ledger showing payments to Paul Manafort from the Party of Regions in May 2016, and this is right after Paul Manafort is named as Trump's campaign manager. A man named Konstantin Kulik, deputy head of the Ukraine Prosecutor General's International Affairs Office, told John Solomon, quote, "For me, it was the first call that something was going wrong and that there is some external influence in this case, and there is some other interest in this case, not in the interest of the investigation and a fair trial." Kulik said Ukrainian authorities had evidence that other Western figures, such as former Obama White House counsel Gregory Craig, also received money from Yanukovych's party, but the Americans weren't interested. They just discussed Manafort. This was all and only what they wanted, nobody else. And you might recognize this guy's name, Greg Craig. He is under indictment now. The other case raised at the January 2016 meeting involved Burisma Holdings. You might remember the name of that company. This is the natural gas company that was being investigated for corruption, improper foreign transfers of money, and at the time Burisma was paying Vice President Joe Biden's son Hunter, because he was a board member and a consultant, more than $3 million flowed from Ukraine to an American firm tied to Hunter Biden in 2014 and 2015. Officials told the Ukrainians that they would prefer that Kiev drop the Burisma probe and allow the FBI to take it over. The Ukrainians didn't agree, but then Joe Biden pressured Ukraine President Petro Poroshenko to fire Ukraine's chief prosecutor in March of 2016. And the Burisma case was transferred to the Anti-Corruption Bureau, and then it was shut down. Now, this ties to Nellie Orr, Christopher Steele, the phony dossier, and Fusion GPS. So you remember that Hillary Clinton hired Fusion GPS to find dirt on Trump and Nellie Orr, who is the wife of Bruce Orr, a top official at the FBI, and she was the one who was set on that task. She admitted to Congress that she routed dirt on Trump linked to Russia from Fusion GPS to the Department of Justice through her husband during the election. Department of Justice emails show that Nellie, on May 30th, 2016, directly alerted her husband and two Department of Justice prosecutors who were specializing in international crimes to the discovery of the Black Ledger documents that led to Paul Manafort's prosecution. And he was horribly treated. He was found guilty of financial misdeeds, and he was kept in solitary confinement for months, treated horribly. And you can see that there was a direct attack on him orchestrated by the Obama White House. So Nellie Orr wrote these words to her husband: reported trove of documents on Ukrainian party of region's black cash box. And she wrote also to federal prosecutors Lisa Holton and Joseph Wheatley, attaching a news article on the announcement of the Anti-Corruption Bureau's release of the documents. Bruce Orr and Christopher Steele, worked on their own effort to get dirt on Manafort from a Russian oligarch, which just means a guy who's very wealthy, whose name is Oleg Deripaska, who had a soured business relationship with him. Deripaska was almost ready to talk to U.S. government officials regarding the money that Manafort stole, and that's in quotes. Bruce Orr wrote in the notes from his conversations with Steele. The efforts eventually led to a September 2016 meeting in which the FBI asked Deripaska if he could help prove Manafort was helping Trump collude with Russia. Deripaska laughed off the notion as preposterous. So great reporting from John Solomon as usual. Then we have post number 3325. Why did Obama assign Renegade as his U.S. Secret Service code name? So this tells us that he chose it himself. I think he was given a list of R words or whatever words, and he chose Renegade. So the post reads, why would a president of the United States, Hussein, assign Renegade as his USSS codename? Define Renegade. It's a noun. It's a person who deserts and betrays an organization, country, or set of principles. Synonyms are traitor, defector, deserter, turncoat, betrayer. And then as an adjective, a renegade is having treacherously changed allegiance. And then a friend sent me this one. A long, long time ago, a renegade was a Christian person who decided to become Muslim. Quite fitting, isn't it? Then we had just a link back to an article, I'll get there eventually, by TruePundit. But let's take a look at this old post from April 25th of 2018. Our friend says, death threats on public release of struck page texts. And then waiting for public release of struck page texts happened, not public, debate how to handle, buying time, toxic, dangerous threats. Okay, so the story that I'm about to read you is something that our number 17 friend said that they really had to think about how they were going to handle this because it's toxic and dangerous and there are threats. And then he adds note 187, which is a code for murder. Sarah Carter wrote this first article, breaking FBI texts show agents discussed recruiting White House personnel. And let's get to the story. So these are texts between Special Agent Strzok and attorney Lisa Page saying that they discussed using briefings to the Trump team after the 2016 election to identify people they could develop for potential relationships, track lines of questioning, and assess changes in demeanor. This is language that one Republican lawmaker called more evidence of irregular conduct in the original Russia probe. Fox News has learned the texts initially released in 2018 by a Senate committee are under renewed scrutiny, with GOP Senators Chuck Grassley and Homeland Security Committee Chair Ron Johnson sending a letter Thursday night, so last night, to Attorney General Bill Barr pushing for more information on the matter. So the text messages begin on the evening of November 17th, 9 days after the election. The string discusses an email to Mike Pence and appears to refer to another upcoming briefing. Strzok and Page debate staffing for the upcoming briefing and whether it would make sense to stay with the same agent or send a different one. It's unclear from the text whether these were part of the formal transition period briefings between outgoing or incoming administrations, or they were routine intelligence briefings. The two discussed the possibility of developing potential relationships. And they said this, he can talked about sending in a CI guy. I'm thinking that means CIA, because I know when you have these old CIA, or I should say former CIA agents discussing the CIA, they usually leave the letter A off. So that's just a guess on my part. But so they send a CI guy to assess someone's demeanor, and then they are concerned because it might be unusual for him to attend this meeting. So here's the quote. He can assess if there are any new questions or different demeanor. If Katie's husband is there, he can see if there are people we can develop for potential relationships. Now, the speculation is that Katie refers to Catherine Seaman, who is the wife of Jack Pitcock, Mike Pence's former chief of staff, because Seaman worked on the FBI's counterintelligence probe into the Trump campaign. Pitcock denied any involvement with Strzok and Page or their investigation in a statement that he provided to Axios. Now, this is a statement from Mike Pence, and he's reacting and saying this to Axios, a media outlet. I was deeply offended to learn that two disgraced FBI agents considered infiltrating our transition team by sending a counterintelligence agent to one of my very first intelligence briefings only 9 days after the election. This is an outrage and only underscores why we need to get to the bottom of how this investigation started in the first place. The American people have a right to what happened, and if these two agents broke the law and ignored longstanding DOJ policies, they must be held accountable. Throwback to Peter Strzok's testimony before Congress. Remember this weird bottle of Coke with the name Kate extended outward so we could see it? And it was always like that. Every picture that I looked at had this bottle with this name. It could just be a coincidence, but it's kind of interesting that the gal's name was that worked for Strzok and that was related, well, married to Chief of Staff for Pence is Kate or Katie. Now, the president also had something to say about this. He was in Indiana today at an NRA convention, and then on his way back he stopped and spoke to the Oval Office reporters, and he said, what took place over the last 2 years, and really before that, in all fairness to Robert Mueller, things happened long before he even started, and what took place is a disgrace to our country. Look at all of the things you've been seeing with the insurance policy statement from the two agents, so that would be Strzok and Page talking about an insurance policy in case Trump gets elected, that are now gone. If you look at many of the elements of intrigue, and frankly we're going to be seeing a lot over the next couple of weeks, things that a lot of people haven't seen. Then he met with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of Japan. That was his last thing for today. So now let's go back to this article from TruePundit. What they're talking about in this article is physical threats to President Trump and to Mike Pence. A high-ranking FBI official confirms a number of the missing 50,000 FBI text messages, as well as other text and email messages among FBI brass, reportedly discussed initiating physical harm to President Donald Trump. And here's the quote, Director Wray wants a lid on this, the FBI official said. Many know there was talk of harming Trump politically, but there is a group here in DC HQ that understands it goes deeper. So that's where it goes from just a let's get him politically to a much more serious type of a threat. We need a special counsel or Homeland Security. Somebody has to clean this up. Outside of DOJ, it is unacceptable. And then, quote, this is much larger than just texts between two FBI agents. The FBI official called on President Trump to do what is necessary to weed out corruption in the FBI. And then another quote, text messages just don't disappear, the FBI official said. Not here. Someone outside DOJ has to look at all emails and texts. These FBI bosses, and that's in parentheses, are bad people. You've only scratched the surface. The high-ranking FBI official called on lawmakers and the Inspector General to focus on the text and email messages of FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. The official referred to McCabe's official and personal correspondences as an anti-Trump treasure trove. Let's summarize this article. So it was first reported in March 2017 that FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe openly threatened President Trump and then National Security Advisor General Mike Flynn. This was said at an invitation-only gathering, and this is as many as 16 top FBI officials are there, and no lower-level agents or support personnel were present. The words were, and I'm paraphrasing, okay, I'm not using the exact words, but use your imagination. First we screw Flynn, and then we screw Trump. Many know there was talk of harming Trump politically, but there is a group here that understands it goes deeper. Remember, this was part of the 5 months worth of text messages that the FBI failed to preserve, and obviously they didn't want these things being found. So let's keep going through the news. President Trump was on with Sean Hannity last night, and he promised Sean it'll all be declassified. He's talking about the FISA court applications and 5 buckets of information, including the 302s, which are the FBI's interview notes, and everything related to this. And he said all of that and even more is going to be declassified. Today, President Trump was in Indianapolis for the NRA's yearly convention, and he made such headlines by doing this. He signed an executive order in front of the crowd that withdraws the U.S. from the UN Arms Trade Treaty. It's called the ATT. So he effectively unsigned this international arms sales agreement on Friday. The agreement sets global standards for regulating transfers of conventional arms from rifles to tanks and airplanes. The U.S. signed onto the agreement in 2013, but has not ratified the treaty, which was in effect since December of 2014, but we weren't part of it. Trump called this ATT a threat to Second Amendment rights, and after signing the executive order, he threw the pen into the crowd. He said, under my administration, we will never surrender American sovereignty to anyone. We will never allow foreign bureaucrats to trample on your Second Amendment freedoms. And that is why my administration will never ratify the UN Arms Trade Treaty. Aren't you glad he's our president? Then we had some other really good news today. Ronna McDaniel summed it up in her tweet. She is the head of the Republican National Committee. She said that GDP just grew 3.2%, the fastest first quarter growth in 4 years. Unemployment hit the lowest level in 50 years. The stock market is at historic highs. Wage growth is the best in 10 years. More than 5 million jobs were created. And then she says, what exactly are Democrats resisting? Gotta love it. And then MSNBC even had to admit this. These were the words they used to describe the first quarter growth. Beautiful, strong, extraordinary, and incredible. Now, how about the best news of all for the weekend? Little 5-year-old Landon, who was tossed over the side of a balcony and fell 39 feet at the Mall of America in Minnesota, is now conscious and alert. His mother says, all praise, glory, and honor to God. He saved our son's life and is healing him in the most miraculous ways. We are so elated to let you know that our son is now alert and conscious and is no longer in critical condition. That is truly a miracle. Let's read this statement from God, which I just thought felt so good when I read this morning, Isaiah 48. Thus saith the Lord, your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel, I am the Lord your God, which teaches you to profit, which leads you by the way that you should go. And even though somebody tried to end Landon's life, God stepped in, and he is truly a miracle working God. So I give him all the praise and the glory and the honor. And I want to thank you all. I hope you have a great weekend. We just pray, Father, for this stuff to keep coming out, and the dirty details that they've tried to hide. Let it all come out. We pray that this renegade former president would be lassoed, however you want to do it, Father. Just capture him, and we pray that he would have to stand trial for his deeds, along with Hillary, along with James Comey, John Brennan, Jim Clapper, all of these people, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, whoever, Father, just please, we want to see justice done. And yes, forgiveness is there, but these people still have to pay for their crimes. We thank you, Father, because you invented the law. We give you praise and glory and honor, and I thank you all so much. Have a great weekend. I will see you next time.